Hello, the Internet. My name's Laura, and this is The Law of the Prince Charming, Chapter 5.1. I still feel like Goldfield is one of my best friends, Tabitha says. She rides beside the wagon as the storytellers leave the city. She can't help but look back, sad that she hadn't said more than a brief goodbye to Goldfield, even as she reminds herself that the tale had created the friendship. If the tale is over, why didn't it fade? You got too close, the huntsman says, so I'll always think of Goldfield as my friend? And it's likely he'll feel the same about you, Wildrose replies. Tabitha had been enchanted by the idea that fairy tales played out in the world, but now she's off balance. A raw, unsettling feeling lurks in her, since she isn't sure which of the lingering emotions to believe. How does it do it, Tabitha asks. How does a tale force you to do things without you even realizing? It's the laws, Wildrose says. The law of magic dictates how things are, and that includes the people in a tale. Does it have to do with true names? Tabitha asks. It does seem like a logical conclusion, doesn't it? Wildrose says. Our true names ties to the magic. That's why a person can command another by invoking it. But as for how the tales control us, no one is quite sure. Just be glad the only thing you ended up with was a friend, the huntsman says. So now the tale is over, what's next? Another tale? Tabitha asks. Well, first we have to write our reports, Wildrose says. The huntsman sighs heavily. Not one of Black's favorite things to do. And that's under normal circumstances, the huntsman says. But for this one, we have to explain what happened, and we don't actually know. I'll take the care of the explanation of the laws. They wouldn't expect that from you anyway, Wildrose shrugs. And they're sending someone to deal with the dust, so that's not an issue either. And what about his involvement? The huntsman looks pointedly at Tabitha. He was a helpful extra pair of hands. At least he knows how to fight, the huntsman says. He's warming up to you. That was almost a compliment. Wildrose smiles at Tabitha before he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the hellhound remnant. He offers it to her. Speaking of the fight, how about you give this remnant a try? Tabitha takes the hellhound tooth and turns it over in her hand. She pictures the large black creatures in her mind, their eyes and mouths glowing with the shadow flame. She absorbs the remnants, and the swirl of laws settle inside her. For a moment, she compares the hellhound's laws inside her to the stone ram, easily able to tell which is which, though she isn't sure why. The hellhound feels different than the stone ram, and also bigger? There's likely more magic there. A remnant gives you its mythic's laws, and as you draw on it, the magic will dwindle and eventually vanish, Wildrose says. He pulls out his storybook from his cloak. The gems on the cover are flashing. Scriven notifications, he says, and opens the book. Is there a mythic? The huntsman asks. We have a new job. What? We're supposed to go back to Prism. We've been on 4 tales now, and our storybooks need to be recharged. It's a Bluebeard. It's where? Still reading. Bluebeard, Tabitha asks. It's a tale where a man marries a woman who discovers his former wives in a wardrobe and then tries to kill her for snooping, this huntsman says. Oh yeah, I never did like that tale, Tabitha says. I mean, it's a happy ending, but it is rather gruesome. It also requires some wives to die first to set it up, and unfortunately, Bluebeard's wives' deaths aren't particularly noticeable, Wildrose says, still reading. Technically, the cycle of wives can continue indefinitely without the proper MC. Once a tale like that is discovered, it shoots to the top of the priority list. Kidder plods back into the forest that led into Goldfield, with the gelding following just beside her. This time the woodwalking is obvious as the early spring leaves on the trees vanish, leaving only a few dead leaves clinging stubbornly to the branches. A cold wind whips around them, and Tabitha reaches for her cloak, noting it is also far earlier in the day than when they had left the kingdom of Goldfield. Did they bother to tell us anything else? The huntsman asks. The Bluebeard is the Lord of Blue Dell, a major noble in the city of Grey Mist. We're in luck. He has just married his wife, and the week-long wedding reception starts tomorrow. At least we don't have to worry about her dying before we get there. How are we going in, bodyguard and lord? Lord and lady. You don't bring a bodyguard along to this type of party. Wildrose says. Wait, lord and lady? You're dressing as a lady? Tabitha asks. I told you, I pass for a lady all the time. Do you actually like dressing like a girl? Do you actually like dressing like a boy? They're just clothes, Tabitha replies. Yes, they are. After they exit the forest, they continue traveling across the bleak landscape for the rest of the day. When the sun grows low enough to cast its colors across the sky, they pull off the road. Below them, down a gentle slope, is a large evergreen forest that the road turns to avoid. Tabitha likes the look of the forest. Why didn't we woodwalk to the forest down there? It's not quite as simple as forest, Wildrose says. For a normal woodwalk spell, the forests have to match in both style and magic. So that forest doesn't have enough magic in it? No, it has too much. Tabitha looks down at the forest with a nagging curiosity. From here, it appears to be a perfectly normal pine forest. She glances over her shoulder to see the huntsman unhook Kidder and lead her up into the wagon. Wildrose follows. It's still early. She can go and get a closer look and be back before either of them notice. Tabitha dismounts and ties the gelding to the wagon before she strolls down the hill toward the forest. The evergreen trees tower over her, their needles rich against the rest of the land's dull colors. Nothing looks particularly magical about the trees or the shadows beneath them. Tabitha takes a step into the forest, and her boot comes down softly in the bed of needles. All of the light vanishes in a moment as the magic of the forest settles around her. Tabitha stops, turning back to see the normal lighted field behind her. When she faces forward again, the forest is muted and dark, as if someone poured ink over a painting. He did say it was a magical forest. Tabitha walks forward, her eyes adjust to the gloom so she can see the outlines of the trees against the deeper shadows. Wind whispers across the branches, and nearby an animal calls out. Each of her steps cracks mutely in the fallen needles. "Who are you?" A voice floats out of the forest. Through the shadows there is movement, but no sound of footfalls. "Is someone there?" Tabitha asks, her voice loud in her ears. She shifts her rings into her sword, holding it ready. 3 softly glowing mirrors fade into view in front of her, with tall ornate frames. Directly in front of her, Tabitha's reflection is dressed in a fancy tunic, like her mother always picks for balls. To one side, the copy appears in a dress with long hair done up. The other mirror has the figure dressed in a white tunic, a storybook in hand. "Who are you?" The reflections speak in unison. Each reflection represents a possible version of her, a role she can play. If she chooses her mirror, then that reflection will become her reality. This knowledge settles on Tabitha as she looks among the mirrors. "Decide," the reflections whisper. Decide who I am? Tabitha's gaze shifts to the reflection of the prince. It is a familiar sight, one she has seen countless times. The poise, the confidence, the generosity. But my mother forced it on me. Tabitha swings her sword. The reflection of the prince sees it coming and pulls out his own sword to defend himself. Tabitha's sword slams into the mirror and the breaking glass screams through the air. I don't have the training to be a storyteller. The mirror also shatters on contact with her blade. She stares at the remaining mirror, the reflection of her as a princess, as a woman. Mother isn't here. The princess is gentle, demure, loved by everyone. Even though it is Tabitha's face, it looks so foreign. I don't know how to be a princess. She stabs her sword right into the middle of the mirror and it fractures. Who are you? More mirrors appear in a circle around her. Each shows another version of hers, roles she has never even considered. I can't just change. It's not that easy. No, 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 she lashes out with her sword, the sound of glass cutting her ears. I can't. Tabitha stops, breathing hard. No more mirrors appear. Light reflects in her eye, a harsh contrast to the inky blackness. Shards of the broken mirrors are sticking out of her sword. Tabitha reaches for them, trying to pull one out. It stuck fast and her fingers slip. The sharp edge slices through her glove and into her finger, drawing blood. She yanks her hand back as the shards and splash of blood sink into the blade. In a few moments they are all gone, leaving the silvery blade unmarred. The sword begins to glow with its own light. She can see the trees now, free from the inky blackness as they each glow from within, just like her sword. She looks closer, thinking she sees something moving within the light, but it glows brighter in her eyes. The world spins around her, and Tabitha collapses into the glow.